Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajikacharya Ashtottara Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajikacharya Ashtottara Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavindra Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. 23. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, 30 seconds on the importance of being careful of pronouncing the A's long when they're long and short when they're short. Now we say Vasudev, but there's also Vasudev. Who can say which is which? Vasudev and Vasudev. Yes, Vasudev is long, and that's Krishna. Bhagavate means Bhagavan, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. And he is the son of Vasudev. And so this happens a lot, just like you have the Dhritarashtra, and you find in the verse 7, I think, of the second chapter here. No, not verse 7, but Arjun's verses in the second chapter. Dashtarastran, the sons of Dhritarashtra. So the sons get the long A, you see, and the father is the short A. And then we have the Yamuna, and the last line of our song, Yamuna, Yamuna Tira. Yamuna. It's usually Yamuna. Yamuna is the name of the river, the famous river in Vrindavan. It's a tributary of the Ganges. It runs into the Ganges at Allahabad. So, but we have Yamuna Tira, means of the Yamuna. Tira is the bank. On the bank of the Yamuna, Krishna is playing his flute in Kavori. So Yamuna Tira, so we have to be sure to pronounce it the right way. And this one little lesson here, if you ever come to Mangalartik, the last verse says, Yasya prasadan bhagavat prasado, yasya prasadan nagati katopi. So one is yasya prasada, means by the mercy of the Guru, one can achieve success to go back to Godhead. But yasya aprasadam, and those two A's, they merge. The last A in yasya and the first A in aprasadam becomes yasya prasadam. Rather than by his non-mercy or by the lack of his mercy, you can't do anything. Without his mercy, you have no hope. So it's very important to pronounce the long A's and the short A's. Just letting you know. Okay, so today is the this fifth. It's the fifth. Sixth. Oh boy, this stupid thing says it's the fifth. Okay, thanks for telling me. So on this sixth day of May, on the 6th day of May, 2025 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace HG Dravida Swami Prabhupada. And we are in chapter 3 entitled Karma Yoga, on text 23 on page 160. Everybody ready? Okay. Yadi yaham navarteyam jatu karman yatandvitaha mama vartmanu vartante manusyak partha sarvashaha yadi yaham navarteyam jatu karman yatandvitaha mama vartmanu vartante manusyak partha sarvashaha yadi yaham navarteyam jatu karman yatandvitaha mama vartmanu vartante manusyak partha sarvashaha. All right, another 15 seconds of Sanskrit instruction. Notice in the first line, we have two instances where the I becomes a Y. That yadi, he, that used to be a HI, if you look in the word by words. But that I became a Y because the next word begins with a vowel, namely A. You see that? So it's yaham, yaham. And then down, if you keep going on the line, karmani, that became karmani with a Y at the end because the next word begins with a vowel, atandritaha. So that's karman yatandritaha. You just merge that Y into the next word, you see? And now we're going to hear Bhakta Nelson. Can you do it? Yadi yaham navarteyam jatu karman yatandritaha mama vartmanu vartante manusya partha sarvashaha. Anyone else on this side? Tapas. Yadi yaham navarteyam jatu karman yatandritaha mama vartmanu vartante manusya partha sarvashaha. Any other men want to try it? Okay, not yet. Okay, go ahead. Yadi yaham navarteyam jatu karman yatandvitaha mama vartmanu vartante manusya partha sarvashaha. Ami. Yadi yaham navarteyam jatu karman yatandvitaha manusya partha sarvashaha manusya partha sarvashaha varteyam. Yadi yaham navarteyam jatu karman yatandvitaha mama vartmanu vartante mama vartmanu vartante manusya partha sarvashaha Yadi yaham navarteyam Data karman yatanditaha Manu martmanu bhartante Manusya parta sarvashaha. Anyone online, Tapas? Okay. Okay, now I just have 30 seconds of bad news for you. And that is, some of you may know this word, mlecha. Mlecha? You want to try not to be a mlecha, right? But the basic meaning, the first meaning of mlecha, are those who don't know how to pronounce Sanskrit properly. Look it up in the dictionary, I swear to God.
Like us.
So we're in the process of becoming non-mlechas by learning how to pronounce, okay? All right, word by word meanings. Yadi, if he, certainly, aham, I, na, do not, varteyam, thus engage, jatu, ever, karmani, in the performance of prescribed duties, atandvitaha, with great care, mama, my, vartma, path, anuvartante, would follow, manushyaha, all men, parta osanapita, sarvajaha, in all respects. For if I ever failed to engage carefully, translation. For if I ever failed to engage in carefully performing prescribed duties, O Partha, certainly all men would follow my path. So this begins with for, which means therefore. So I'm going to read the previous translation. O son of Prita, there is no work prescribed for me within all the three planetary systems, nor am I in want of anything, nor have I need to obtain anything, and yet I am engaged in prescribed duties. Krishna is engaged in these prescribed duties. Why? Because if I ever failed to engage in carefully performing prescribed duties, certainly all men would follow my path. Purport. In order to keep the balance of social tranquility for progress in spiritual life, there are traditional family usages meant for every civilized man. Although such rules and regulations are for the conditioned souls and not Lord Krishna. Because he descended to establish the principles of religion, he followed the prescribed rules. Otherwise, common men would follow in his footsteps, because he is the greatest authority. From the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is understood that Lord Krishna was performing all the religious duties at home and out of home as required of a householder. And this goes back to text 21, which we'll just real quick. I'll do the Sanskrit myself. Yad yadatarati shreshtas tatadevetaro janha sayat pamanam kurute lokas tadanavartate. Whatever action a great man performs, common men will follow. And whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. And okay. Ahome jnana timarandasya jnanandana shalakaya chakshur unmidatam mena tasmai shri gurave namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. Okay, that was a short purport. And just to reiterate, many of you have heard of this, of the word acharya. Acharya. Acharya is a very important word for us because we highly respect, if you'll hear about all the time, the chain of disciplic succession from spiritual master to disciple, and the disciple becomes a spiritual master and has his own disciples. And in this way, the knowledge comes down, and the process of Krishna consciousness is spread throughout India, throughout the world in the same way. So that word acharya comes from the word achar, which means behavior. So in other words, the definition of an acharya is someone who knows the Shastra very well, follows the injunctions of the Shastra, and teaches it to others. So without following himself, or herself really also, then they can't teach. I think probably would quote Mahatma Gandhi or something, that some lady came to him and asked, my son is eating too many sweets. Can you please tell him not to? Because he had such authority. He said, well, maybe tomorrow or the next day. Was it the sweets? I think. Huh? Ram Krishna? Oh, okay. Anyway, so it's someone who was very prominent. And he said, okay, well, give me a couple of days. So then a couple of days he said, okay, now I'm ready. So what happened? Well, I myself was eating too many sweets. So I couldn't tell him with any authority. Now I've given up sweets. Now I can try to get him to stop eating all the candy like that. So this principle is very important. It's shown by all of the great leaders, not just spiritual leaders, but especially the great kings and leaders in India, that they would be very religious and very careful in their behavior, because their whole, what nation they're leading, they're looking up to them. Now, unfortunately, in the modern day, that principle, I'm not going to go into modern politics, but I don't think we can apply. You can see what the problem is. It goes the other way too. If the person who's at the head is, what shall I say, a rascal, then everyone's going to be a rascal. What is that? Uh-huh. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so Krishna is saying here that and when it says that he was, Krishna was following all the things, he's speaking this, there's different phases of Krishna's Leela. Now, first he was born in Mathura, which encompasses Vrindavan, but it's a different place. And then he was taken to Vrindavan. I'm not going to get into all the reasons why, And in Vrindavan, that's where the most delightful and ultimate pastimes are, because that's a replica of Goloka Vrindavan. And that's where he has his, relationships with his friends and with the gopis and with his parents, all very, very wonderful. And he's not a king there. He's not, they don't even know he's God for the most part. But it's the intensity of the feeling for Krishna and the devotion to Krishna is the greatest there. And then, I'm not going to get into the whole thing, but he had to leave Vrindavan and go to Mathura. And there he killed the big demon king named Kṛṣṇa. And eventually he settled in Dwarka. Dwarka was a magical place. It was built on the sea. It was built on the sea. It wasn't built because it was all meant for the security of all the Mathura Vasis. He transferred them there because this big demon king named Jarasan came attacking the city of Mathura. It's a long story. But eventually, Krishna, who never married in Vrindavan, he was just a young boy, Eventually he married 8 queens, and then he killed one king who had kidnapped 16,100 young girls, and he liberated them all. So in India, it's very strict there. If you're ever out of home or then you can't be married, So he liberated them, and then now you can go home. He said, what's the use of us going home? Nobody will marry us, so you have to marry us. Can you marry us, please? 16,100. He said, okay, no problem. So he can expand. He expanded in 16,108 because he had the original 8 queens. And then he had all these palaces he built in Dwarka. 16,108 palaces. So each queen had his company because he expanded himself in that way. You see? So this is what's being described here. But in that situation, it describes how he'd be sleeping there with the queens. But just at dawn, when the cocks crew, then he would get up and go and meditate. What would he meditate on? Himself. Supposed to meditate on God, so he would meditate on himself. So Prabhupada says in the Krishna book, that doesn't mean we're supposed to meditate on ourselves. But he would meditate. And in other words, just like we get up and go to Mangalartik, he would get up very early and do so many, the meditation and everything like that, because he is showing the example as a perfect householder life. Now in Vrindavan, he was a perfect rascal. He was, but everyone loved him for it. He would go and he would steal the butter from the ladies' houses. He and Balaram would break in, and they would they hung the butter and the yogurt up in these pots near the ceiling, but somehow they would build a little structure out of whatever was in the place, and they would go and get the pots and pull it down and eat it, And when they were full, they'd feed it to the monkeys, So this became a regular thing, and Yashoda's friends came and complained about Krishna. So I wrote a little poem about that. There's a painting, my favorite painting. Krishna looks like he's about 4 maybe, and he's got one hand into the butter pot, and some of it's spilled on the ground. And he's looking at you with these love-filled eyes, charming eyes, What, me? I didn't do anything. It's a real nice painting. So Yashoda's friends approached her and complained about her naughty son, the butter thief. "Oh friend, this son of yours must be restrained. He simply torments us with no relief. We trust that you will thoroughly chastise this naughty boy who steals and eats our food." But then he looked at them with love-filled eyes, awakening their sweet maternal mood. And so Yashoda and her friends were drowned in waves and whirlpools of maternal love. In all three worlds, no greater love is found. Its home is in Goloka, far above. So if you want my poems, it'll cost you. You got to send me an email. And in that PDF that I made, this poem has an illustration, because I originally wrote it inspired by a painting. There's 12 poems that I did for a calendar one year. This is back in 21 years ago. And those were some of the first poems I wrote. So each of the poems has this illustration and a nice poem to go with it, caption. So you can memorize those, visualize the painting, and recite the poem, and become absorbed in Krishna consciousness. All for free. Okay, so back to our verses. So now Krishna is explaining the importance of the Acharya principle in relation to himself. Text 24. Utsideyori me loka nakuryam karma chedaham sankarasya chikartasyam upahanyam imapraja. If I did not perform prescribed duties, all these worlds would be put to ruination. I would be the cause of creating unwanted population, and I would thereby destroy the peace of all living beings. Purport. Varna Sankara is unwanted population which disturbs the peace of the general society. In order to check this social disturbance, there are prescribed rules and regulations by which the population can automatically become peaceful and organized for spiritual progress in life. When Lord Krishna descends, naturally he deals with such rules and regulations in order to maintain the prestige and necessity of such important performances. The Lord is the father of all living entities, and if the living entities are misguided indirectly, the responsibility goes to the Lord. Therefore, whenever there is general disregard of regulative principles, the Lord himself descends and corrects the society. We should, however, note carefully that although we have to follow in the footsteps of the Lord, we still have to remember that we cannot imitate him. Following and imitating are not on the same level. We cannot imitate the Lord by lifting Govardhan Hill, as the Lord did in his childhood. It is impossible for any human being. We have to follow his instructions, but we may not imitate him at any time. The Srimad Bhagavatam 10:33-30-31 affirms, Naitat samachayet jatu manasapi yanishwaraha vinashyat chacharan maudhyad yatha rudrobdi jambisham ishwaranam vachak satyam tatayava charitam tvachit tesham yat svavacho yuktam buddhimangs tat samacharet. One should simply follow the instructions of the Lord and his empowered servants. Their instructions are all good for us, and any intelligent person will perform them as instructed. However, one should guard against trying to imitate their actions. One should not try to drink the ocean of poison in imitation of Lord Shiva. It's interesting, we're just reading that in the morning now. Shiva has just drunk the poison. We should always consider the position of the Ishwaras, or those who can actually control the movements of the sun and moon, as superior. Without such power, one cannot imitate the Ishwaras, who are super powerful. Lord Shiva drank poison to the extent of swallowing an ocean. But if any common man tries to drink even a fragment of such poison, he will be killed. There are many pseudo-devotees of Lord Shiva who want to indulge in smoking ganja, I think it's ganja, marijuana, and similar intoxicating drugs, forgetting that by so imitating the acts of Lord Shiva, they are calling death very near. Similarly, there are some pseudo-devotees of Lord Krishna who prefer to imitate the Lord in his Rasa Leela, or dance of love, forgetting their inability to lift Govardhan Hill. It is best, therefore, that one not try to imitate the powerful, but simply follow their instructions. Nor should one try to occupy their posts without qualification. There are so many, quote, incarnations of God without the power of the Supreme Godhead. So the verse, I don't think was quoted here, there's a verse in the Bhagavatam, and I think it's in context of the 5 chapters of the Rasa Lila, that one should follow the instructions of the Lord and follow their actions as long as their actions don't conflict with their instructions. In other words, the powerful can do so many things that we can't, obviously. And we have to recognize our limitations at all levels. So the best thing to do is to, for instance, here in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is telling us to surrender unto him, not to imitate him. The book ends in the 18th chapter, 65, 66. Just think of me, become devoted, worship me, and bow down low. You'll come to me, O friend. I promise you this boon I shall bestow. Just give up all other dharmas and surrender only unto me. Your sins will nullify, O Arjun, from anxiety be free. So this is the essence of the instruction of the Bhagavad Gita, culminates in that. And Krishna came again as Lord Chaitanya to give us the most easy method of doing that. Because in our present state, the Kali Yuga, we're all conditioned to not follow these strict rules and regulations of Bhakti Yoga, spontaneously. So how to clear away the illusion and the reticence of wanting to do that, this process of chanting Hare Krishna, without any prerequisite, doesn't matter, what you've done yesterday or 10 years ago, whatever, or who you are, what your age is, what your gender is, what your nationality, it doesn't matter. If you can simply have enough faith to try this chanting, you'll find that Krishna from within is giving you the instruction and giving you the strength to follow other principles that 2 days ago you thought would be impossible for you. So this is why it's the Maha Mantra. It's a very, very powerful mantra. I like to quote, probably would like to quote this Upanishad, 2 verses from the Upanishad, the Kali Santarana Upanishad. The very name of the Upanishad is very inspiring. Kali Santarana means that which liberates you from the bonds of Kali, the age of Kali that we're in now. So within that Upanishad, there are these 2 very important verses. The first one, which you know already. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And then the next verse, Iti Shodashakam Nam Kali Kalmasha Nashanam, Natak Padataropaya Sarva Vedeshu Drishyate. So the last line means there, you can search through all the Vedas, which are very vast, the Upanishads, the Puranas, the Samhitas, everything. You can search through them all, but you will not find a better way to counteract the contaminating and dangerous effects and influence of the age of Kali than these 16 names. These 16 names that we're chanting, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. That's why it's called the Maha Mantra, very, very powerful. So it's a wonderful gift. Just like I like to give the analogy, I learned so much on my walk going, So the first thing I encounter is this bodega at the end of the block, which they're always advertising the lottery. They have a big thing outside, the thing was at California lottery, and then they tell you how much you can win, $100 million. Oh, it's up to $1 billion. Well, of course. So, but it's all just a scam, It's like devotees couldn't, if they're ever tempted, they say, well, what's the use? Even if I win, I'll be, they'll say, what, you're gambling? Get out. You can't be part of Hare Krishna anymore. It's breaking the regular principle. So anyway, if you have any temptation, don't do it. But the point is that this is much more valuable than a $1 billion lottery ticket, winning a ticket. Because it opens up the possibility of you actually achieving the goal of life, the mission of human life. Now, is also a very important verse, in this endeavor, there's no loss or diminution. So even if you just chant a little bit and then it's too hard and you get distracted and you don't do anything else, still, that chanting is in your bank account, and you're putting in your bank account. And the next birth, you will be a human being. And you'll be in a situation somehow to take up the next time. In fact, the fact that we're sitting here may have been we did something in our past life that we became interested in this. So anyway, this is a central message of all my classes basically. don't waste this precious human form of life. And in this human form, don't waste the precious time. You can't get the second back, you know. So whatever opportunity we have to cultivate the knowledge and to practice and to associate with devotees, take part in the festivals, where this is coming up on real festival season. Make a plan to go to the LA Ratha Yatra. Have you ever been to it? Oh, this year. This is very, very important. Usually it's the first Sunday in August, unless it's an Ekadashi. Then it's the second Sunday in August. I'm not sure. It's 1 in 7. Every 7 years, usually. But anyway, that's a wonderful festival coming up. Just next week, we're celebrating Lord Nrsingadev. You know, very, very inspiring. So you take advantage of this precious time, and what Srila Prabhupada has given us all these gifts. And soon you realize we're the luckiest people in the world. You know, we're most fortunate. That's the whole point of the preaching, of the effort to make people fortunate by giving us, you know, exposing them to Krishna consciousness and giving them a chance to turn again toward Krishna. So this is so Krishna is saying, if I don't perform, then I would be responsible for the degradation of the world. Okay, 25, right? Sakta karmani vidvangsho yata kurvanti bharata kuryad vidvang tata saktash chikishu loka sangraham. As the ignorant perform their duties with attachment to results, the learned may similarly act, but without attachment, for the sake of leading people on the right path. Purport. A person in Krishna consciousness and a person not in Krishna consciousness are differentiated by different desires. A Krishna conscious person does not do anything which is not conducive to development of Krishna consciousness. He may even act exactly like the ignorant person who is too much attached to material activities, but one is engaged in such activities for the satisfaction of his sense gratification, whereas the other is engaged for the satisfaction of Krishna. Therefore, the Krishna conscious person is required to show the people how to act and how to engage the results of action for the purpose of Krishna consciousness. Now, just from a personal experience, and you can all have this by reading the Lilamrita, you can see how Prabhupada acted when he came. Because we have to remember, this is the mid-60s, and there were a lot of bogus yogis. You know, those who came to teach yoga, and mostly they would say, well, what do the people want out of yoga? Okay, they want to get healthy. So there were a lot of yoga studios opened up, you know. I have a friend, and he's a famous friend now. His name is Amala Bhakta Swami. Some of you may have heard his recordings. He's famous for that. He's still kicking up there, up in LA. He's over 90. He's in his 90s now. Maybe because he did yoga, so much yoga. But anyway, he's still going on. So he wrote, I can send you this article. So I met him first. I was anxious to regain my health. I had a serious case of hepatitis in 1969. I was in the hospital for a month. And when I came out, I was, you know, kind of depressed. But I wanted a way to regain my health. And I had heard about yoga, you know. And so I said, well, let me try that. And so I looked in the yellow pages. Remember the yellow pages? Before you had the smartphones. You do. So there were no yoga studios where I was living on Long Island, but in Manhattan they had a couple. So I saw one, and I went in there. And it turned out to be run by this sannyasi, who was named at that time, I think, Shiva Prem or something like that. So I started doing that, and I was benefiting from it, you know. And then it was a bit, you know, it was in mid-Manhattan on the east side. If you don't know Manhattan, you don't know, but that's where, you know, not rich people live, you know. So mostly it was middle-aged ladies, you know, trying to get some weight off, you know, and stuff like that. So I was doing the asanas, standing on it, just stretching. Anyway, I left that ashram, and I eventually spent a lot of time on the other side, on the west side of Manhattan. It was the Integral Yoga Institute by Satchidananda. You may remember him. He was running it. So that was much more appealing, a lot of young people, you know, and this and that. And that's where I first started meditating. And I was also going into the Ramakrishna mission. They had a big building there. Probably still have it. You know, they were in the early 2000s. They came to America. There's a whole story of that. So that was more on the impersonalist side, you know. But I loved. But there was one leader there. He was taking over for the fellow who had kind of had a stroke, and he was too old. Prabhupada met him, named Nikhilananda. But he was very well-spoken, and he gave Bhagavad Gita class, and I liked to hear them. So anyway, I eventually met a fellow who was an immigrant from India, and he'd come over, and he was an engineer, but he was a sold-out Ram Bhakta, Lord Ramchandra. And he found that I was interested in Ram Leela, you know, and he was telling me, so we became friends. And eventually he told me, why don't we go down to the Kṛṣṇa temple? Because we were going on Sunday, they would invite us for lunch, you know, in the Ramakrishna mission. And, but, you know, it was kind of dull. But then you said, let's go down to the Hare Krishna temple. You know, I didn't know what was it. All right, but I had a car, because I was driving in from the Long Island, so I drove down. That was my first trip there, you know. And I was overwhelmed, because I was much more into meditating, you know, and Ramakrishna, which is more or less void, you know. And there were these deities, and a loud music, and there were these guys in orange, and they, at the end of the kirtan, they all had these huge plates of food. And what is all this, you know? And so they eventually invited me down to the prasadam hall was underneath the temple room. And I couldn't eat any of it. I was completely eating raw food, you know, and nothing was raw. And I said, no, just try this halva a little bit, you know. I said, okay. So I tried a little. I was addicted right away. I've told this story before. So I would go in regularly on Sundays after that, and they would give me a whole half a gallon, you know, milk container, empty milk container, full of halva for the week. It would last about 3 days, maybe 4 days maximum. So that was great. I got addicted to that, so it kept me coming back. And eventually I took up the chanting. I was still working, you know, I still had my hard job. So I'm working, so I got up early in the morning, did a few asanas, you know, and then I did my 2 rounds, and I chanted on the way to work, you know. And so, and I was by default, kind of, I was following the 4 regs, you know, because I was into that. Anyway, eventually I came to the point where, anyway, this is a long story, where I said, what's the point, you know? And I decided I should join up. And so that happened on March 27th, 1973. And it's the best decision I ever made. So it's, but I was actually, you know, when I went to the temple, I was taking advantage of the gifts that Srila Prabhupada had given. Everything was from his hard effort, and it's just so amazing when the story is told, when you read about it, how he struggled so hard when he came to get here, and then, you know, he was with a yogi who was an impersonalist, and, you know, he wouldn't let him preach because he knew that he had more charisma, and that Prabhupada would take his students, so he gave him you can't live here anymore, you have to live across town in an office, and I'll support you. What could Prabhupada do? So he's living in this office, and he's having little classes, just like as big as a train, you know, compartment. So all of this struggle, eventually he went downtown and he met Mukunda, you know, and all of the Hayagriva, Kirtananda. So it started. But the point I'm making is that Prabhupada struggled, and you could see his, and this Amala Bhakta, this is what I came to. He eventually left his guru, you know, because he would go, he went across town to the big temple. We had a big temple then, on 55th Street on the west side, and he was way on the east side. So he just had to walk across town. And he heard one of our leading preachers preach, Vidyananda Das Goswami, you know. And eventually he realized that his guru was a cheater. And I have an article he wrote, he told me about it, and I took notes and everything and put it together in an article, and I can send that to you as a PDF. And you can see it's very well done. It's an incredible story, how he left his guru and came to Prabhupada. Because his guru was a cheater. He would come once a year, demand that he stay in a penthouse in the east side of New York, you know, like $500 a night probably, you know. And you could line up and you could take initiation for $15, you know. So I went to see him, or maybe $30, and you could see him for $15. So I went and saw him. I got about 2 minutes darshan, big deal. And it was just, and then Amala Bhakta, he just, in this article, he just he revealed his mind, how he just thought he was saved. The Prabhupada was the genuine article. He sacrificed everything, even after the movement is done. He said, oh, now I can travel. He would go all over the world, in age 75, his health wasn't so great, but he would travel to be with the devotees, build this temple in Bombay. The land, they tried to cheat him out of the land. They sent the police to wreck the temporary temple that they had built. It was such a struggle. But he had, because of his sincerity and his genuine care for the devotees, they could feel his love. He had a core of extremely dedicated followers, like Madhudvish Maharaj, Giriraj Swami, and of course Tamal Krishna Maharaj. And they were sacrificing also and inspired. So this is the way, and you could see from Prabhupada, he never cashed out, He never said, oh, whatever money came, he would spend on, let's print some more books. Wow, thank you for the donation, let's build a temple, So he was following exactly this, which is that to be selfless. Whatever you get, you realize is coming from Krishna. Let me give as much of it as I can to Krishna. And you feel that the best thing is you don't become attached to that. This is what Karma Yoga is all about. It means acting selflessly. You have, what am I working with here? I've got hands, I've got intelligence, everything, but it's all a gift of Krishna, you see? And if you actually give to him, even a little bit of effort, you clean the temple after the Sunday feast or something, you can feel the connection. It's a very joyful thing. You're doing it for Krishna and you're doing it for everyone else too, so that everyone can have a clean temple to come into. So this is what bhakti is the pleasure of giving pleasure to Krishna and his devotees. And that pleasure can expand unlimitedly, both in time and space, because it's on the spiritual level, spiritual platform. So that is like, but what do we got here? These temporary bodies, which are healthy for a short amount of time, and they can enjoy, but then there's some reaction if you try to enjoy too much. And it's obviously temporary, and so where's the pleasure? It's all illusion, But the pleasure of Krishna consciousness is real. It's real, and it can expand unlimitedly. We should have that faith. All right, so it's getting a little late. Any questions, comments? Okay. Where are we? 26? Nabuddhibedam janehed agyanam karmasanginam joshayet sarva karmani vidvan yukta samacharan. So as not to disrupt the minds of ignorant men attached to the fruitive results of prescribed duties, a learned person should not induce them to stop work. Rather, by working in the spirit of devotion, he should engage them in all sorts of activities for the gradual development of Krishna consciousness. Purport. Vedas sarva ahameva vedya. That is the end of all Vedic rituals. So what this means is that by all the Vedas, this is 15:15, the famous verse. By all the Vedas, I am to be known. Everything, all the Upanishads and everything ultimately cultivates in knowledge of me. All rituals, all performances of sacrifices, and everything that is put into the Vedas, including all direction for material activities, are meant for understanding Krishna, who is the ultimate goal of all, the ultimate goal of life, But because the conditioned souls do not know anything beyond sense gratification, they study the Vedas to that end. But through fruitive activities and sense gratification regulated by the Vedic rituals, one is gradually elevated to Krishna consciousness. Therefore, a realized soul in Krishna consciousness should not disturb others in their activities or understanding. But he should act by showing how the results of all work can be dedicated to the service of Krishna. The learned Krishna-conscious person may act in such a way that the ignorant person working for sense gratification may learn how to act and how to behave. Although the ignorant man is not to be disturbed in his activities, a slightly developed Krishna-conscious person may directly be engaged in the service of the Lord without waiting for other Vedic formulas. For this fortunate man, there is no need to follow the Vedic rituals, because by direct Krishna consciousness, one can have all the results one would otherwise derive from following one's prescribed duties. Okay, so the idea is that like the Varnashram system, you may have heard that already. Varnashram is a combination of two words, Varna and Ashram. Varna is the social classes, the Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras. And Krishna says that this is present all over the world, and Prabhupada pointed, maybe not by that name, but you see that in every society there's an intelligent class. You know, I mean, those who have, let's call them high IQ. And they can be teachers and writers and whatever like that. And then there's a Kshatriya class, those who are good at taking charge, managing, and ruling others, you know, politicians and presidents and kings like that. So, and then there's a business class, those who are good at making money, you know, and they're supposed to protect cows, you know, and do that. Also farmers, they come into this, into that category, mercantile. And then there's the manual laborers, you know, work with your hands, you know. I never knew the first thing about cars. Now I know the first thing about cars from associating a little bit with Bhakta Joey. But I don't know, you know, I never could do that. But some kids, you know, when I was growing up, as soon as they could, they get under the hood, you know, they learn how to, you know, work with cars. So someone who's naturally good at that, that's the Shudra types, and there's many of those. So, but there are rules and regulations within that. And those are set by the Brahmins. The Brahmins are the intellectuals, and they're not just high IQ. They're also meant to follow rules of austerity and selflessness and cleanliness and religiousness. Ideally, a Brahmin really is a Vaishnav, Brahmin Vaishnav. He's also religious. And so that's the Varnas, that's the social categories. Then you have the ashrams, means that growing up, ideally a child, you know, a boy especially, will go to a gurukul, mean be trained also in spiritual values. Prabhupada says in the second chapter that an Aryan is someone who knows the spiritual values of life and lives and therefore tries to create a spiritual culture and spiritual civilization. Now that word was ruined, you know, for the Nazis. They took it on with the Aryans, you know. But it's just the real Aryans are their life is dedicated for the service, for helping others as well as living comfortably, you know. So that's what real society is, and that's where you have the brahmacharis, the grihastas, the vanaprasthas, and the sannyasis. This is a spiritual development where the brahmacharis are trained in Gurukul. Prabhupada set up the Gurukul. They learn, they're learning verses and they're learning self-control and all these different things, training, along with, you know, learning how to read and things like that. And then the grihasta means a regulated household life. It's not that you can definitely be a devotee and be a householder, but there's certain rules and regulations because the whole idea is you have to control the demands of the senses and guide them, use them in Krishna conscious way. So you have children, but these children are meant to be raised as devotees, you see? And there's so many rules and regulations for the household life. And then at a certain point, there's retired life, vanaprastha. And traditionally, men and women, they'll have some grown-up children, you know, they're okay, they're taken care of. And then you go traveling to the different holy places. Nowadays, you can spend your whole time just traveling around America and going to the temples there. But usually, you know, you go to India and you want to see, you know. And then at a certain point, ideally, this isn't for everyone, but ideally, the man will take sannyas, which is heavy-duty renunciation. And then just spend his time preaching and, you know, and chanting Hare Krishna. So that's the Vedic civilization. Prabhupada wanted to set it up. And there's you know, ISKCON is kind of trying to do that in many ways. It's not so easy to do it perfectly. But that's the basic outline. So that's, you know, and without that, then you have this Varna Sankara. Now this word came up at the beginning. Varna Sankara means a population that isn't trained at all in this regard. And what do? They just become sensualists, criminals, who knows what, they're out of control. Varna Sankara. And this can create a tremendous burden on society. You have gangs, you have, all kinds of things going on. And then when they get to be adults, they don't get any better. They just get, if they're smart, they get organized, crime. So that's a very, very dangerous situation. And in Kali Yuga especially, it becomes like, it's like that. So it's a long shot, Prabhupada coming to America, planting the seed of bhakti in this age. But because of the power of the mantra and because of his own purity and determination, he was able to plant the seed and see the ISKCON grow all over the world. And next year, I think it's next year, they're planning to open that TOVP. I didn't really directly contribute much to the TOVP, although I do say when I was in Mayapur one year, I gave $100 that I had somehow collected. But that's not the point. My main contribution, and it's a small one, but I regard it as important, because the TOVP was, Prabhupada on his morning walks, he was talking about this magnificent temple that he wanted to start. It was predicted by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in Mayapur. And so what to call it? So they thought it was going to be called the Temple of Understanding. And Prabhupada said, no, not Temple of Understanding. You call it Temple of Vedic Planetarium. Now, why Vedic Planetarium? I heard about this, and you may be surprised to learn it, that, believe it or not, communism took hold in certain parts of Indian culture at a certain point, right? I don't know how big it is now. Yes, and Bengal, where Mayapur is, they had a communist ruler. So they weren't so happy to authorize the building of a big temple to God, But so Prabhupada, he presented it, well, we're going to have a big planetarium there. Show the planets and everything. Oh, good, the science, okay. Yeah. So that came to be known as, the means by which they would get all the permits and everything to build it. So you read the fifth canto, whoa, who knew that the universe was like that? So that's a big part of it. So it's called Temple of Vedic Planetarium. So I said, that's not going to fly, Temple of Vedic Planetarium. They would consult me on these editing things. I want to edit the title of it, I should be the Temple of the Vedic Planetarium. You got to have those thes in there. It's like I've on a campaign to put the thes in for the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita. Would you go along and say, yeah, I've been reading Quran, I read Bible every now and then. Prabhu, the Quran, the Bible, and the Bhagavad Gita. So I'm trying to get him in here. I've done it so far in the CC, the Krishna book, the Isha Upanishad, and the teaching of Lord Chaitanya. I'm trying to do it in the Bhagavad Gita also. But anyway, I forgot where I was going with all that. But I think that, Krishna is talking about the responsibility of those who are leaders in society to not just be rascals and be bad examples, and you end up with Varna Sankara, which is a great burden on society. People who are untrained in any of this thing, and so what do they become? They're like animals. This is Kali Yuga. It can happen like that. So Krishna is describing here, and it's what you do. That's karma. Karma means your activities, the examples that you show by the activities of your life. How you can be a good example for people, and you can guide people in the right way. So that's what he's saying. As ignorant perform the duties with attachment to results, the learned may similarly act, but without attachment, for the sake of leading people on the right path. So this Acharya principle is what he's speaking about here. Well, we've come to that magic hour, or minute. Let's have a couple of poems. So let's see. So this is a nice one, because it's very instructive. I think it's quoted in the CC. Manasijapani dushte, labdapatos mi dushte, timadagahana rupe, hanta sangsara kupe. Ajitanakadarakshahe tamurdara daksham, upanayamama haste, bhakti rajun namaste. Now, for those who know Sanskrit a little bit, what is the Bhakti Rajam? Rope of Bhakti. The rope of Bhakti, yeah. Fallen in this deep and dark and dirty well of Maya, threatened by the snake of lust, whose venom burns like fire. Helplessly I pray, O Lord, whose strength is near in doubt. This is the Ajita. Helplessly I pray, O Lord, whose strength is near in doubt. Place the rope of Bhakti in my hands and pull me out. Now, what do we have to do? If you're in a deep well and you're trapped there, and someone puts down a rope, what do you have to do? They're going to pull you out. You have to hold on to the rope, right? Otherwise, they can't do anything. So, holding on to the rope means we have the instructions, we have the process. If we follow it carefully, we're holding on the rope, and Krishna will definitely pull us out. So that's the idea. Okay, something real sweet, really sweet. Maduram maduram bapadasya babo maduram maduram badanam maduram. Madugandhi mridu smitametadaho maduram 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 maduram. Now, you practically know this verse already. Maduram means sweet. Sweet, sweet is my dear Lord's form. Just visualize Giridhari. Sweet, sweet is my dear Lord's form. Sweet is still his face, so fair. But his honey-scented, gentle smile is sweet beyond compare. It's in your file. Anyone who's got those poetry files, you can learn it. And if you, so one of these days, if you chant it, if you chant it to me, I will probably fall on the ground and roll around in ecstasy. Because that's the whole point. Oh, you got it recorded? Oh, now I'm in trouble. All right. All glory to Srila Prabhupada.